Sometimes love is blind. So blind that we may say things we wouldn't normally say or do things we wouldn't normally do. For Tracey Bradley, love made her put all her trust in the devil. And in exchange, she may very well have paid the ultimate price. Her children. Rita and Victoria were the oldest, and they helped Tracey look after the younger two girls, Tionda, 10, and Diamond, 4. Growing up in Chicago, the girls spent a lot of time between their grandmother's flat and their mother's South Side apartment. Tracey would often leave the girls after they went to sleep for the night and sneak over to her boyfriend George's place. That is what she did the night of July 5th, 2001, except this time, Tionda and Diamond weren't left in the care of their older sisters. They were left alone. Tracey's boyfriend, George Washington, never showed any interest whatsoever in any of her 4 children. And so it was a bit out of the ordinary when George offered to take Tracey and the 2 younger children on a camping trip the following day. The older 2 sisters were told they couldn't go on the camping trip this time and were promised they would be able to go the next time, so they had been dropped off at their grandmother's place. After leaving Tionda and Diamond home alone all night, Tracey tried calling them multiple times the following day, July 6th, 2001, the last day anyone would see these babies alive, and a day that will forever be etched in her mind as the day her 2 youngest children would vanish without a trace. This is the case of the missing Bradley sisters, and this is Gone in a Blink. Hey, true crime fans, I'm your host, Heather.
I'm Danielle.
And welcome to episode 10 of Gone in a Blink. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our listeners for their continued support and for helping us to get the word out there and share these cases that we cover. Your positivity and dedication mean the absolute world to us, and we could not do it without you.
Yes, thank you.
So today we are discussing the case of missing sisters Tionda and Diamond Bradley. So if you're ready, let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Tracey Bradley gave birth to Tionda Bradley on January 20th, 1991 in Chicago, Illinois. Her older sisters, Rita and Victoria, were ecstatic at the thought of having a new baby sister. And then several years later, on November 25th, 1997, they would feel that excitement all over again when Tracey gave birth to another sweet baby girl named Diamond. Tracey was a single mother, raising all 4 girls in her 3rd floor Southside Chicago apartment. And her mother lived in a small flat not that far from the Bradley home. And the girls would bounce back and forth between their home and their grandmother's place. So the girls' aunt, April Jackson, described Tionda as wildly outspoken and extremely mature for her age. She described Diamond as the baby of the family and being more of the shy one. On July 4th, 2001, the family all got together for a huge 4th of July celebration at Washington Park. They grilled hot dogs and played games and watched fireworks. And sadly, that would be the last celebration the family would have together. So around this time, Tracey Bradley was dating a man by the name of George Washington. She started dating George sometime between 1995 and 1996, and he didn't have a very close relationship with Tracey's kids. Tracey's older sisters, Rita and Victoria, claimed that they had never been to George's home and that they really didn't talk to him except for on the rare occasions when he would pick them up, like from school and things like that. Tracey had gotten into the habit of sneaking off to George's place after the kids went to bed, and this was something she would do quite often. On July 5th, it was reported that George had asked Tracey and the girls to go camping with him. Tracey and her kids had never been camping before. However, Tracey claims that they couldn't afford to take all 4 kids. So her and George decided that they would take the 2 younger ones, Tionda and Diamond, and so they dropped the 2 older girls off at their grandmother's apartment on the evening of July 5th with a promise that they would take them camping the following week. According to Tracey, the plan was to head out on their camping trip with Tionda and Diamond after she got home from work on July 6th. Tracey had originally stated that on the morning of July 6th, she woke up early at her apartment to get ready for work, telling Tionda and Diamond, "Don't answer the door for nobody." That's a direct quote. Before leaving them alone. So she told them, don't answer the door. She left them alone. And her calls kept going straight to voicemail when she tried to call them from work the next day on her lunch break. She called her mother in a state of panic. And when her mother's calls also went straight to voicemail when she would try to call the girls, Tracey left work and raced to the apartment she shared with her daughters. When Tracey opened the door to her apartment, you could hear a pin drop. The place was filled with an absolute eerie silence. And she then noticed a really strange note on the back of the couch that was supposedly written by Tionda. The note that Tionda supposedly wrote had said that her and Diamond had gone to the store and then to a school playground nearby. It wouldn't be until 8 hours later, around 7 p.m. that evening, that Tracey would report her 2 daughters missing to the police. Now, reports from the Chicago PD claim that they felt that some of the details in this case were a bit shifty from the beginning. For starters, they felt that the note was allegedly written by Tionda didn't seem like something that a 10-year-old would write. The wording was a bit more advanced and there were no spelling errors. Tracey stated that it was not like Tionda to write a note and that she would have just called her mother at work, and that's typically what she would do anyway. Also, Tracey had left for work around 6 a.m., as I mentioned earlier, and she had originally stated to police that she left her apartment early that morning to go to work, telling her daughters to not answer the door. But it was later discovered that Tracey had in fact stayed at George's house the night before and had left Tionda and Diamond home by themselves the entire night. The morning of the 6th, which is the day that the girls disappeared, George dropped her off at work and she returned to her apartment around 11 a.m. when she couldn't reach the girls on the phone. When asked by police why she waited 8 hours to report her children missing, she stated that she was afraid that if authorities knew that she left her 2 young girls home alone all night, they would try to take her other 2 children away from her. And that's quite possible.
Despite Tracey never having been a suspect in the girls' disappearance, there were many things that just didn't add up. Why would Tracey separate the younger girls from the older sisters the night before they were to go on the camping trip? Also, as far as anyone knew, Tracey and George were the only 2 people besides maybe the girls' grandmother that knew Tionda and Diamond would be home alone that night. George never became involved in the searches for the 2 girls. When it was discovered that they were missing, Tracey decided she wanted to go out searching for her daughters. George Washington drove Tracey to a couple of places to look for the girls. However, he remained in the car while Tracey searched. Then he drove Tracey to the 35th Street pedestrian bridge near the lakefront, 5 blocks from her apartment, and left her there. After telling her to call him if she hears anything about the girls. After he leaves, Tracey walks down to the lakefront to search for her girls.
This is where I kind of felt that George was... I was kind of suspicious of George after hearing this part, because even though he wasn't close to them, he didn't even help search for them. So you would think that if he cared enough even about Tracey, that he would be right there by her side searching for those little girls. But he basically dropped Tracey off and was like, hey, okay, let me know if you hear anything, and just took off.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's so many red flags, honestly, in this story so far and maybe I missed this. How old are the two older daughters?
I did not find anything specifically stating their ages, but I think there's a pretty decent age gap between Tionda, because of the two, Tionda was 10 and Diamond was 3. So the older girls, I don't know. I just couldn't find anything, but everything that I did find insinuated that there was a decent age gap. So I guess another red flag would be the fact that they weren't going to take all 4 kids. I've never been able to understand that one. I know camping generally, from my experience, and I'm not an avid camper, but it's not a lot more money per person, I don't believe. Now, I could be wrong, and if I am, stop me, but it seemed like this was all set up to me. You take the 2 older girls, you drop them off at grandma's house, and you take the 2 younger girls. It was just weird. Plus, actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so maybe we should keep reading.
Okay. So on July 7th, the day after Tionda and Diamond went missing, family members were gathered at the house to talk and try and comfort one another. Tracey's sister Faith had accessed Tracey's phone and decided to check her voicemail. She was absolutely shocked to her core to find a voicemail from Tionda on the morning of her disappearance. The voicemail was left at 8 a.m. on July 6th, and in it, Tionda says, "Mommy, I'm going to the store with George." Tionda says in the message, "Mom, answer your phone. George is at the door. He says we're going to go pick up a cake for Vicky." Tionda was referring to her older sister, Victoria, and it is important to note that Victoria's birthday was on the day after the young girls disappeared, and the day after George was planning to take Tracey and the young girls camping, which was just another thing that the family members as well as investigators found very odd. Yeah, I would say so, that they were going on this camping trip and Tracey was going to miss her older daughter's birthday for this.
Right. Another red flag that I found very, very strange, that they chose to go over Victoria's birthday.
Right, exactly. Why would Tracey and the girls go camping with George over Victoria's birthday? And if they were going camping and wouldn't be there for her birthday, why would they go to the store and buy her a cake if they weren't going to be around to celebrate? So that's one. Also, why would they not take her camping to celebrate? Like, I guess something else is coming into mind for me. If they didn't have enough to bring the girls camping, they're going to go buy a cake. Usually cakes at the store are about $30. You could very easily bring the other 2 girls camping, with that money. So I don't know, because it's not that much more, as we were saying earlier, that much more expensive to bring them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was so focused on the fact that they were planning a camping trip over Victoria's birthday that I didn't even think about that you're going to go buy a cake, and cakes are not cheap generally. And you could have used that money to let them go camping as well, which I don't feel like would have been much more. But again, all of this is very suspicious.
Well, exactly. So to this day, no one investigating this case has heard the voicemail left by Tionda on the morning she went missing. However, several family members admit to hearing it. The girls' great aunt, Scrillah Bradley Smith, claims that she recorded the voicemail with her own phone and then sent it to her email address before converting it to an audio file. Investigators have downright begged her to let them listen to the voicemail left by Tionda. However, Miss Bradley Smith claims she is unable to access it because it requires an access code and if she accidentally enters the wrong code, it will destroy the audio file. During George's interview with the police, he denied ever going to Tracey's apartment that morning. If this lady is this great aunt, Ms. Bradley Smith, is savvy enough to know to record the voicemail and to email it to herself, then I think that she is savvy enough, tech savvy enough to know how to put in an access code. I don't even know how that would even work. If she emailed it to herself, she's not going to need an access code for herself.
No, I thought that was weird too, that I've never heard of needing an access code. She should have just been able to open that file right up. But
right.
And if it wasn't for the fact that several family members were sitting there and heard the voicemail also, I would probably, in my opinion, think that the aunt was lying. But several family members were sitting there and claimed to have heard it. So I feel like she's holding on to it because she doesn't want to get someone in trouble. Either she's afraid of getting someone in trouble, or she just doesn't want to get them in trouble, because I can't think of another reason why you would hang on to something so important when two little girls are missing and not hand that over to police.
Exactly. And so she hasn't accessed it since that time. She hasn't even listened to it again, supposedly. So then what is she even holding on for it now anyways? Because it's doing no good.
Right. It's not doing any good at all. So it doesn't make sense to me. There's definitely something behind that. So George and Tracey's relationship was a tumultuous one, to say the least. George was said to have numerous women that he would spend time with. He was said to be manipulative and controlling, and would often threaten Tracey by telling her he would kill her if she ever left him. When Tracey became pregnant with Diamond, she told George that he was Diamond's father. This infuriated George because he was married at the time and he didn't want to pay child support for Diamond. Oddly enough, Tracey had asked George to take a paternity test just 3 weeks before the girls disappeared. After their disappearance, the results of the test came back, and it was determined that George was, in fact, Diamond's father. And just a little strange fact, George's first wife's name is Diamond. So,
really?
Yeah. Why they named their child after his first wife is beyond me. But yeah, so I thought that was very strange. But
well, so what's kind of strange on that, because so Tracey would have had the baby, but if the child's 3 or 4 years old, before the paternity test. So it wouldn't seem, and if George wanted nothing to do with the child anyways, would he have been in the delivery room? So would it have been him that had any agreeance on naming the child Diamond? It sounds like Tracey named the child Diamond.
She was obviously with him when she gave birth to Diamond, and I don't know if it was a situation where she knew. I mean, surely she probably knew that his I don't know if it was his current wife who was named Diamond or if it was a previous wife, but it's it's not coincidental. I won't believe for a second that that's coincidental that she just happened to, or maybe he did. He was the one that was like, oh, you should name your child Diamond. I don't know, but whatever the situation was, it was really odd. It's very odd to me that he would do that, or that she would do that. So despite everything, Tracey stated in an interview on Investigative Discovery's Disappeared that she was in love with George. Retired investigator Pam Childs stated that Tracey wanted more from George, something that he would never do. She wanted him to love her. When asked by investigators on why the older sisters weren't invited to go camping with them, she stated that she really didn't have an answer as to why they couldn't go. That sounds to me like that was all something orchestrated by George.
Yeah, but I guess where I'm still stuck is why. The two younger daughters could go, but not the older ones. Unless I'm getting ahead of myself and there's something else coming. Because, okay, to get rid of the child that Diamond, that's his, but then what about the other one? What about Tionda?
Well, investigators have always believed that the girls went with someone they knew. They've always believed that from the very beginning. The amount of circumstantial evidence building up against George was huge, and it was only about to grow bigger. So, days after the girls disappeared, investigators searched George's home and car, and they recovered receipts found in his home that showed that on July 7th, he had gone to a hardware store where he purchased industrial-sized trash bags and 2 pairs of gloves. When police recovered the roll of trash bags, they discovered that 5 trash bags were missing and the gloves were never found. Investigators then spoke to George's neighbors. One of his neighbors said that they saw him burning something in a barrel. The neighbor also claimed that after the barrel had cooled, George threw it into the trunk of his car. He was burning this, according to his neighbor, in his garage. So George shot down this claim really quickly and denied even owning a barrel. However, when investigators searched his residence, they found charring in the rafters of the garage. And after searching his trunk, they also found that there were marks that were consistent with an industrial-sized barrel. George Washington was given a polygraph that he actually passed. And I don't know how he passed that, but
I've heard that psychopaths can pass polygraph.
And that's true. And there are psychopaths that passed polygraphs who actually did kill. And there are people that are completely innocent who have downright failed polygraph tests. So that would be a huge reason why they're not admissible in court. But
you could see that, yes.
At any rate, he passed it. So investigators feel it in their hearts of hearts that it's a huge possibility that George killed Diamond because he didn't want to pay child support. And they believe that Tionda witnessed this and then he killed her. Handwriting experts have analyzed the note supposedly written by Tionda Bradley. While they say that the handwriting is Tionda's, family members believe Tionda was forced to write that note. And I actually think that's a very good possibility. In 2001, hairs were recovered from the trunk of George's car, but were never sent to the lab to be tested. And by the time current investigators working on the case had discovered this, they immediately sent them off for testing. And the results ended up being a match to Tracey and Tionda. However, it was not enough to make an arrest. So they've got a lot of evidence, a lot of circumstantial evidence piling up against George.
They really do. And I know, I mean, it's innocent till proven guilty, and you have to have more than just substantial evidence. But, it gets, so frustrating to see all this evidence and, these 2 little girls that deserve justice. But since it's not concrete, or since this guy is such a psychopath that he was able to pass a polygraph, that it's gone this long without them getting any kind of justice.
Yeah, it is. And I know that this is something that investigators deal with a lot. They firmly believe they know who committed this horrific crime, and their hands are kind of tied. And that has got to be the worst feeling ever. So when he was questioned by police about the hair, George claimed that okay, get this. He was questioned about the hair in his trunk, in the trunk of his car. George claimed that he used to take Tracey and the kids to the drive-in and would have the kids ride in the trunk of his car to avoid paying for them. Okay? That's how he's explaining the hair. But when questioned...
So, didn't we just say that he didn't really have much to do with the kids? So we've gone from that to he used to take them to the drive-in and have them be in the trunk of his car to avoid paying?
Well, this is coming from George. The kids are saying that he never had much of a relationship. And so, I'm going to go on a limb and say that the kids are the ones telling the truth. He is just trying to save his ass in this whole situation. So this is what he makes up.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, he's making this up to try and justify hair that was found in his trunk that matches Tionda's and Tracey's. And if it matches Tracey's, it's going to match Diamond's. So when Victoria and Rita were asked if they had ever been in George's trunk or if he's ever taken them to the drive-in, and they denied both of these things. They denied that both of these things had ever happened. So in 2003, and mind you, Tracey's never been a suspect, but her story has been very shifty, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if she knows that George did something to her children, if she's trying to cover up for him, or why her behavior has been so shifty, but she knows that he's been questioned by police up until that point. She knows that something's off with George. And in 2003, Tracey had another baby by George. And this time, they had a boy named George Jr., and George Sr. ended up taking Tracey to court and somehow managed to receive full custody of their son.
What?
Yeah. Not sure what judge was on that case, or how that even came about. I mean, you do have the fact that Tracey left 2 young children home all night by themselves, and that's probably not the first time that's ever happened. But on the same note, you have a man that is being questioned by authorities and is a suspect in the case of 2 missing children. Not sure how he was awarded custody of another child, but it happened nonetheless. So,
well, and I mean, who knows, I guess. Think about if we were to lose any of our children, that, they'd go missing, or, something like this, to where partially at fault, leaving them home alone all night. As a mother, that would really stick with you. And lots of times people try to kind of mask the pain or get the pain to go away by feeling numb, taking drugs, alcohol, whatever, to make themselves numb. So this was 2 years after that the girls had disappeared, and who knows what her state of mind was at that time.
That's true too. And she was completely blinded by George and the love she felt for George. And that happens all the time. That happens a lot with couples, and especially when there's abuse going on and he had threatened to kill her and things like that, but she still loved him despite everything. And I think even if she felt deep down that he had done something to her children, she was still blinded by that enough to have another child by him. So most recently, in May of 2023, a woman posted a video on social media claiming to be Diamond. The family...
What?
Yes. So, young girl was on social media and said that she was Diamond. And this wasn't the first time that this type of thing had happened, where someone was contacting the family saying that they were either Diamond or Tionda. And so because of that, because that's happened times before, the family was not getting their hopes up, mostly because of the fact that had happened before. So, and any time that had happened in the past, nothing had ever panned out from that. In the latest claim, though, the woman claiming to be Diamond had actually reached out to the FBI in the hopes of getting DNA testing to determine if she is in fact really Diamond Bradley. So no results have been determined as of yet that I could find. So that should be very interesting to find out what happens with that. But
that would, blow this case wide open. Honestly, everything that they've found up until this point is pointing to that they were discarded, that they were, killed in some way. And so now for this woman to come about saying that she's Diamond, wow, I'd really like more information. Like, okay, if this is really Diamond, then where has she been?
Well, and it's really easy to discredit that claim right off the get-go. But what got me wondering if, hey, maybe this is Diamond, is if it was just a big hoax, would she really have reached out to the FBI? I mean, I don't know. Maybe she would have, but I thought that, was kind of hopeful. I hope that, obviously, we all hope that she is alive, but then where's Tionda? There's a lot of questions that go with that, and it definitely takes the case in a different direction, because then you do wonder where Tionda is, and like you said, all evidence is pointing to these girls not being alive, and that it's a good possibility that George is the reason for that. So I guess we'll find out and keep our listeners updated when we do hear more on whether or not this is in fact Diamond Bradley. If anyone has information on the whereabouts of Tionda or Diamond Bradley, or if you have any other info that you feel may help in this case, please contact the Chicago Police Department at area code 312-747-5789 or the FBI Illinois office at area code 312-421-6700. Or you could contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Gone in a Blink. If you like our show, please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and check out our website at goneinablink at buzzsprout.com. You can also follow us on any of our social media sites. You can follow us on Facebook at Gone in a Blink Podcast or Instagram at Gone in a Blink Pod. Or you can now visit our YouTube and listen at Gone in a Blink Podcast at Gone in a Blink. And if you have an idea for a case you'd like us to cover, you can email us at goneinablinkpod@gmail.com. And finally, please remember, stay safe, stay smart, and try not to blink.